Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. It all started with that ring. It's ironic to say that such a tiny detail was the first domino that caused my marriage to crumble. Emma's wedding ring, the platinum band she used to unconsciously turn whenever she thought about it, had suddenly disappeared. Not lost, but deliberately missing. That night we were watching TV, and I noticed her fingers were bare. The ring was her pride and joy, platinum and understated elegance, the diamonds reflecting just the right amount of light. I looked around and there was nothing on the coffee table, nothing on the kitchen counter. Even the nightstand drawer where she usually placed the ring when she took it off was empty. "Where's the ring?" I asked, pretending to be casual, trying to control the tension in my voice. Emma didn't even look up, still staring at her cell phone, the electronic device that I was growing to loathe. "Oh, it's at the jewelry store." She answered too quickly. "It needs to be resized." Resizing? I frowned. 7 years of marriage, that statement sounds inexplicable. You've been wearing them for years, and now you're just having them adjusted? Emma shrugged and finally looked up, a flash of impatience in her eyes. "Finger sizes change, don't they?" I didn't pursue it further, but the explanation clearly didn't make sense. If anything, Emma's body has gotten better. Lately she's been working out harder, spending more time in front of the mirror getting dressed up and trying out all sorts of new looks. At first I thought it was a way for her to get away from the monotony of her life. But now the missing ring planted a seed of doubt in my mind. 2 weeks later, I got my first solid lead. Emma told me she was going to a new social event and would be home late. I was never the jealous husband type and never cared for her going out alone to meet friends or attend events. But this time, everything felt wrong. "What activity?" I asked as naturally as I could. Her answer came too soon. "Just some company people you don't know." I wasn't expecting her to give a specific name, but this perfunctory attitude of hers made me uncomfortable. Emma has always loved to share the details of her life, sometimes to the point of talking too much. But now, her words became short, and each word seemed carefully considered. The following Saturday, I decided to go to her social event to see for myself. It took some careful planning, and I checked her schedule, tracked down the locations of the restaurants she'd been frequenting lately, and eventually got a rough idea of where she might show up. When I walked into that bar, I saw her right away. Emma wasn't with a group of coworkers or even friends. She was leaning against a man I'd never seen before, her hand on his arm, her laugh too loud, too familiar. I stood still and stiffened. I didn't want to believe what was in front of me, and I kept telling myself in my mind that it couldn't be. But what happened next made it impossible for me to fool myself. Emma reached up and caressed the man's face, moving as naturally as if she'd done this a million times before. Something shattered inside me. Instead of seething on the spot, I hid in the shadows, watching their every move. The way they gestured when they spoke, the distance they stood, and the way Emma's lips lingered when she whispered in his ear. She wasn't just cheating, she was completely used to the betrayal. When she kissed the man, I turned away. I didn't know what to do with these emotions, so I drove around the city aimlessly for a few hours, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel too hard. By the time I got home, Emma was in bed, her cell phone glowing faintly on the kitchen counter. For the first time in my life, I picked up her cell phone. My hands were shaking, but I had to know the truth. The message list quickly found the name, William. Those silly flirtatious texts leave nothing to the imagination, and the ambiguity between them is obvious. But what broke my heart the most was a simple message: "Can't wait to see you again tonight. You're worth the risk." She knew I had found out everything, and that I had looked at her cell phone. When we woke up the next day, we all pretended nothing had happened. She thought I was just in a bad mood, but in reality, I had already begun plotting my revenge. At that moment, I realized that our marriage had gone sour a long time ago, and Emma didn't even bother to hide her betrayal. The next afternoon, I picked up Emma's laptop while she was in the shower. I knew it was a bit mean to do so, but her betrayal had long ago broken all boundaries of trust between us. It was almost as if fate had given me a gift that her email remained logged in. The truth was there, naked before me. A whole series of email exchanges with William, from initial work exchanges to later flirtations to specific date plans. He's more than just a dewy-eyed love interest. He's become a fixture in Emma's life. I had closed the computer when Emma came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her hair still dripping. She visibly froze when she saw me sitting on the edge of the bed. "What are you looking at?" There was a hint of caution in her voice. "Nothing," I said calmly, "just thinking about things." She nodded and turned to the check room, but I could sense her unease. This uneasiness is not rooted in guilt, but in the fear of being found out. It made me more certain of what I was going to do next. I started a systematic investigation. Emma always had her cell phone with her, but she neglected to mention another important detail. In the innermost drawer of her meticulously organized dresser, tucked under a pile of long unused scarves, I found her spare cell phone. This discovery made my heart sink to the bottom. The spare cell phone was not password protected, another oversight on Emma's part. The moment the screen lit up, William's name appeared at the top of the message list. My hand shook a little, but I clicked in. The photos, the videos, the intimate conversations, everything was there. Their selfies at the bar, their pictures together at the gym, their intimate moments in his car. Emma is smiling so much in the photo, and that happiness is something I haven't seen on her face in a long time. But what shocked me the most was William's social media accounts. The egotistical asshole didn't even try to hide anything. His Instagram page is filled with workout selfies, expensive steak dinners, and smug motivational quotes. Emma is a recurring figure in his Moments of Significance compilations. In one video, William brings the camera in close as Emma laughs her ass off. In another, she's sitting on his lap with her neck craned back, completely absorbed in the merriment. The accompanying text made me even angrier. "She's a pain in the ass, but I like a challenge, and some risks are worth taking." It's not their closeness that's most outrageous. It's this blatant braggadocio. Emma didn't care about having to set any boundaries at all. She was completely engrossed and didn't care about the risk that she might be found out. I continue to dig deeper. LinkedIn has William's complete career information. His company, position, even the gym he frequents, everything is clearly visible. Behind his carefully crafted professional image is naked arrogance. He probably thought he couldn't touch it because Emma had never expressed any desire to keep any distance. These discoveries gradually moved me out of my initial shock and anger and into calm reflection. I can't let them play with my feelings and destroy my marriage so easily. As I pieced together all of William's information, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Emma betrayed me, yes, but William actively intervened in my marriage. Since he thinks he can destroy other people's lives with impunity, let him taste the price as well. I started taking notes on every detail, when and where their dates were, what their conversations were about, his every move on social media. I organized this information as if I were preparing an important report for work. But this isn't a job. This is the first step in my revenge plan. Emma became more cautious when she realized that my attitude was starting to grow cold. I could tell she was trying to hide it, trying to act like it was business as usual. She would deliberately seek out topics of conversation at breakfast time and would suddenly show an unusual amount of interest in my work. But now, every move she makes seems contrived and fake to me. I let her think her disguise was working. On her socializing nights, I would calmly nod my head and pretend to believe her poor excuses. When she mentions working overtime, I show understanding. I'm waiting for the perfect time, for that perfect moment when I can completely destroy them. Finally, on a Friday afternoon, the time came. I intercepted a conversation where they were planning a last date for that weekend. I know it won't really be the last time, but it's just the opportunity one needs. I began to execute my plan, and the first step was to make William realize that his seemingly perfect life was about to fall apart. My first blow came both fast and accurate. Using an anonymous email account, I sent a well-worded email to William's supervisor. "Dear Mr. Johnson, I hope this email doesn't bother you. I need to express my concern regarding certain inappropriate behavior by your employee William. I recently discovered some social media content and email exchanges involving his inappropriate workplace relationships that could damage the company's reputation. I think it is necessary to keep you informed. Please find attached the relevant evidence. To whom it may concern." I've included carefully selected screenshots, intimate photos of William's Instagram story with Emma, their ambiguous email exchanges, and some clearly suggestive accounts of workplace interactions. Then I hit send and waited for the butterfly effect to begin. The effect is immediate. By noon, William's Instagram account suddenly disappeared. All those smug selfies, intimate photos with Emma, and pretentious inspirational quotes dissolved into a void. It came crashing down just like his hypocritical perfect persona. Emma spends the day locked in her bedroom with her cell phone pressed to her ear whispering urgently. Despite the closed door, I could hear her anxious tone. How would he know? Who told him that? After a short pause, I don't care what your boss thinks. Figure it out. This shouldn't have leaked out. I actually felt a twinge of pleasure inside as I watched her panic. It turns out that perfect Emma can get her hands dirty and pay for what she did. But that's just the beginning. I continue to monitor their every move. Through Emma's spare cell phone, I learned that they had agreed to meet at a cafe on Friday night. This will be what they call their last meeting, trying to make final adjustments before the storm hits. I arrived at the cafe an hour early and chose a secluded corner. Emma showed up right on time, wearing that red dress she got her for our anniversary. Ironically, she now wears it to meet her lover. William was already there waiting for her, sitting by the window. He looked much more haggard, and the workplace turmoil had clearly robbed him of his former complacency. As soon as Emma saw him, her face immediately broke into a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. That joy from the inside out stung my eyes. I sat there, silently recording their every intimate gesture. Emma kept touching William's arm and leaning forward, completely absorbed in their little world. William looked nervous, looking around every now and then as if he was worried about what might suddenly appear. But Emma doesn't seem to care. Her demeanor is so natural, as if this is the life she deserves. When Emma left, I continued to follow William. He drove back to his place, an ordinary suburban rental house. I waited across the street for a moment, watching the light come on in his room, then walked up and rang the doorbell. When William opened the door, his face instantly turned pale. He didn't expect to see me on his doorstep. "We need to talk," I said, pressing a step closer without waiting for a response. He stepped back, stammering for something to say. "Look, I don't know what you thought." "Save it." I interrupted him, my voice low and cold. "This isn't a conversation. This is a warning." William puts his hands up in a defensive stance. His panicked look was a far cry from his social media persona. "Look, man, I'm sorry. You've lost your job," I continued, each word hitting him like ice. "But if you think that's the end of it, you're sorely mistaken. Stay away from my wife, or what happens next will make you regret it even more." I understand." He nodded quickly, his face as pale as paper. "You better understand." I stared at him one last time before turning away. Halfway there, I stopped abruptly and turned back to add, "Remember, William, this is just the beginning." By the time we got home, Emma was asleep, or pretending to be. Her cell phone was still clutched in her hand, like it was her last resort. Good. Let her continue to wallow in the lies she's weaving. Tomorrow, she would face a whole new reality. I lay in bed in the guest room that night, thinking back on it all. Emma would never have imagined that her perfect William would be so vulnerable in the face of real conflict. And that's just the beginning. There's one final blow to my plan, and it's going to be a fatal one. I opened my phone and once again examined the evidence I'd collected. All of Emma and William's communications, photos, videos, and the sickeningly sweet words. It's time for everyone to know the truth, to realize how costly betrayal really is. Tomorrow, I'll show Emma that she's lost not only a husband, but everyone's trust and respect. The next morning, I sat at the dining room table, staring at the completely untouched cup of coffee in my hand. The sunlight slanted in through the window and shone on the desktop while my mind raced, contemplating the action I was about to take. I could have just confronted Emma and let all my anger out, but that would have been too cheap. She didn't deserve such painful relief. Emma didn't wake up until after 9, hair still tousled, wearing my sweats and leggings like everything was normal. I felt my jaw clench, and it was hard to resist the urge to yell directly at her. "Good morning." Her voice was brisk as she walked over to get her favorite mug and started pouring coffee, humming some silly little tune. I couldn't help but speak up. How was the socializing last night? Her hand paused, barely perceptible, but I caught it. She quickly regained her normalcy and turned to face me with a fake, sickening smile. It's not bad. It's just a social occasion, well, a lot of small talk. You know. Oh yeah. I leaned back in my chair, stirring my coffee slowly, and said, as if absently, funny, I happened to be in that neighborhood last night, but I didn't see you guys. There was a crack in her smile. It was subtle, but I could see it clearly. Oh, maybe the timing wasn't right. We switched to a quieter place to talk later. The ease with which the lies flowed from her mouth like water made me sick. Yeah. I nodded and looked her straight in the eye. She was the first to look away, pretending to sip her coffee. That's when I noticed the red dress she wore last night hitched to the chair by the door. She didn't even bother to hang it up properly. Her dress was crumpled and there was a dark stain at the neckline. That's not a lipstick print. Emma never uses anything but nude shades of lipstick. I stood up, walked past her and picked up the dress. Her body stiffened visibly. You've gotten careless lately, Emma. My voice is low. She jerked her head around, a flash of confusion in her eyes before she regained her deliberate calm. What does that mean? I held up my skirt and pointed to the stain. This isn't you, is it? For a moment, she looked flustered, but then she laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that made my blood boil. You're not suspecting anything because of a stain, are you? That's red wine accidentally spilled at dinner. Don't be so ridiculous. She came over to me and snatched the dress out of my hands with a shocking arrogance in her tone. I had to clench my fists to control myself from flinging her lies right in her face. Sure, I said, letting her think she'd won. Red wine does explain this. But her reaction had told me everything I needed to know. She's lying, and she knows I know it. Later that afternoon, I decided it was time to take further action. I opened my phone and created a new group message to Emma, William, our families and closest friends. The theme is simple. The truth comes out. Dear all, I think it's time to let you know the truth of the matter. Emma, this is for you. Your texts with William, your dates, your lies. You betrayed me. You betrayed this marriage, and I deserve better than the web of lies you've woven. This is my official goodbye. I attached all the evidence to the message. Text message logs, photos, videos, each of which clearly demonstrated her betrayal. The moment I pressed send, I felt relieved, like a heavy burden had finally been lifted. The message received an almost immediate response. First, Emma, are you crazy? How dare you? You ruined my life. I didn't reply. Then her sister Sarah, is this true? God, Emma keeps saying she's happy. What's going on? I didn't reply to her either. William also messaged, what's wrong with you? Why involve everyone? This time I replied, my problem? My problem is that you think you can cheat on my wife and get away with it. Welcome to the consequences of your behavior, William. And then I blackballed him. Emma fidgeted in the living room, her cell phone in her grip. Her once so elegant and calm image was gone, replaced by a strong sense of despair and fear. Every question she asked out loud, are you still angry? Why are you so quiet? All with palpable anxiety. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what. At about 8 p.m., she announced that she was going to the grocery store. I nodded perfunctorily and pretended to be concentrating on the soccer game. When I heard her car pull out of the driveway, I sprang into action. I pulled out my long-packed suitcase and took one last look around the home that was once filled with memories. I was standing in the doorway when Emma returned with her shopping bags. Where are you going? Her voice shook a little when she saw the suitcase. You're right, Emma. I said calmly, none of us are happy. But unlike you, I choose to remain loyal. Watching her face crumble under the words, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. I grabbed my suitcase and closed the door, cutting off the relationship that was full of lies. For the first time in a long time, I felt so relieved, like I was finally free from her lies and William's shadow. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. It's going to be by my rules, and without her. I didn't go far and stayed at a cheap hotel on the outskirts of town. Just need a space to think, a place where Emma's shadow doesn't loom. I didn't sleep that first night. my mind constantly replaying everything that had happened in the past and thinking about the path I was going to take next. The next morning, my phone had been flooded with messages from Emma. There are angry accusations, "You ruined my reputation." There are pleading words, "Please, let's talk and we can fix everything." And words that try to manipulate my emotions. "You didn't have to do that. We could have worked it out." I ignored all this information. What really surprised me was the reaction from the people around me. Friends, family, and even casual acquaintances began contacting me to express their views and opinions. Emma's mother was the first to call, her voice shaking. "Is this true?" I simply replied, "Every word." She sighed deeply. "I don't know what to say. She's my daughter after all, but I'm sorry you're going through this." My best friend Jason's reaction was more direct. "I've always thought there was something wrong with her. It's just been bad," he said. "You deserve better, brother." I'm not sure it makes me feel better, but at least I know someone is on my side. The most surprising message was from Emma's sister Sarah. "Honestly, Emma has always been like this, thinking she can do whatever she wants without consequences. I'm glad someone finally got her to recognize reality." Those words left a deep mark on my heart and made me realize that it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about the nature of Emma. By the next day, Emma was silent. Maybe it was finally realizing that her tricks weren't going to work. I've heard that her friends are starting to distance themselves from her, finding it too embarrassing to keep in touch with a betrayer. William also disappeared completely, and his suspension became permanent. Then I did something I haven't done in a long time: go to the gym. Not the perfunctory kind of workout, but real, sweat-inducing training. Every weight lifted, every kilometer run was like lifting a weight from the past. Emma, William, all those lies and betrayals, I left them in the sweat. One night, I sat in my hotel room, pulled out a notebook, and started writing down my thoughts. What's next? Where to? I haven't planned my life on my own in over a decade. I had put all my energy into maintaining a relationship that simply wasn't worth it, and now it was time to start over. The first order of business was to find a new place to live. I can't have that house full of memories. Let Emma keep it. I want a fresh start. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, not big, but cozy enough, and most importantly, without any connection to the past. I'm starting to reconnect with old friends who have been estranged by Emma's relationship. Drinking beers with Jason, reuniting with buddies from college, and even visiting his sister who has been holding out on Emma. "Finally," she said when she heard about our divorce, "you deserve better, brother, always." Those words sound extraordinarily different now. I might have laughed it off before as just the prejudice of a loved one, but now I'm starting to believe those words. The divorce proceeded faster than I expected. Emma seems to have lost the will to fight, and her lawyer handles most of the affairs. She barely showed up. Maybe she was ashamed, or maybe she just didn't care. I left her the house and most of the joint property. All I wanted was my dignity and freedom. It was a drizzly Thursday when the final divorce papers arrived. I stared at the envelope with "Divorce Decree" printed on it for a long time. It should have been a sad moment, but all I felt was relief. I threw the envelope on the table and drove to a lake I used to go to when I was a teenager. The rain has stopped and the air is crisp. Sitting on the front hood of my car, looking out over the calm lake, I thought seriously about the future for the first time. Not a future with Emma, but a future of my own. Time is healing everything. The sting of betrayal faded into a distant, dull ache. Occasionally one hears from mutual friends that Emma is not doing so well, that her friends have alienated her, and that her relationship with William broke down immediately after the truth came out. But none of this gives me any pleasure anymore, only a twinge of pity. My career began to take off in unexpected ways. Without the emotional baggage, I put all my energy into my work and was soon promoted. With more income, I started planning things that I always wanted to do but never realized. I started traveling to places I've always wanted to go instead of keeping those dreams on the shelf. I met Hannah at a photography workshop. Funny enough, we were both trying to capture the sunset and both messed up the composition. She laughed at my lame jokes, and I found myself laughing more that afternoon than I had in the past 7 years combined. Hannah is different. She doesn't play games, she doesn't make excuses, and most importantly, she makes me feel important. We're moving slowly, but solidly and reliably every step of the way. Looking back on it all, I don't regret anything. Not regretting the marriage, not regretting the pain, not even regretting that messy end. These experiences have taught me valuable lessons. Trust your instincts, stand up for yourself, and never compromise for something you shouldn't accept. To anyone who is going through a similar dilemma, I would say, don't let someone else's betrayal define your life. Don't stay in a relationship that leaves you feeling undervalued, neglected, or betrayed. You deserve better. Even if it seems dark now, believe that this could be the beginning of a path to a better life. For me, this experience ended up being the path to a new life. Yes, the path began with pain and confusion, but it eventually led me to something better than what I had found. Now, I'll never look back. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.